Now, this afternoon, Vice President Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia says there will be a need for a clear plan to contain the undulating prices of fuel on the global market. Based on projections that fuel prices may remain high on the market, the Vice President is of the opinion that developing nations such as Ghana would have to take immediate steps and develop a clear plan to deal with the situation in order to avert associated economic challenges. We can now listen to the Vice President speak on this matter.
The effects of global warming are becoming increasingly evident as we have seen the changes in weather patterns and other natural disasters, both in their frequency and in magnitude. Whether it is in the ice melt, floods, drought, hurricanes, the impact is becoming more evident every day. Most urgent is the impact on agriculture, crop adaptation, and the entire food chain. It is becoming more urgent for us to take the necessary actions towards slowing down this dangerous phenomenon that puts our planet at risk. The obvious way to addressing this problem is by reducing greenhouse gas emissions, which are the main cause of global warming. Ladies and gentlemen, it is estimated that the way in which we produce and use energy accounts for more than 80% of the total greenhouse gas emissions. Although we still need the energy to improve our economy, it has become imperative that we reduce emissions from production and the use of energy by replacing high-emitting fuels, particularly fossils, with sustainable fuels such as renewables. The end goal of such an effort is to achieve net zero carbon emissions. This effort of changing or moving away from energy produced from fossils to energy produced from renewables and other clean, high-efficiency sources is what we term the energy transition.
So obviously the Vice President is concerned about what's happening elsewhere, the external factors and how they're impacting on fuel prices here within Ghana. There's a need for us to have an understanding of what's accounting for this price build-up and why we seem not to have control over the fuel prices here in Ghana, and it keeps escalating. Joining us, fortunately at this point, is Barrister Tunti. He is head of pricing at the National Petroleum Authority. Thank you, sir, for joining us on The Pulse and helping us understand what's happening in terms of the external factors influencing fuel prices. First of all, what do you make of the points that the Vice President has raised, calling on stakeholders to try and strategize, develop a clear plan to deal with these matters? It appears we're having challenges here.
Thank you very much.
Yes, precisely.
Thank you very much, President. Good afternoon to you and your listeners. Indeed, what the Vice President said is right, and I think this is a time we should be looking at what we can do as a country or consuming nations to protect ourselves against this, the impact of the rising prices. I'm sure we have had several discussions, and the issue about what can we do, especially in the context of a deregulated market where government has stopped subsidizing petroleum products. It's important that we do everything we can to protect the consumer from having the direct impact, feeling the direct impact of rising prices at the pumps. You would recall that just recently, about November, December 2021, and just January 2022, we requested for government to take off the price stabilization recovery levy. Clearly, just that's not enough. So it is important that we look at other measures to push in the country.
And that's where a lot of people out there have difficulties in terms of understanding what it is that the external factors are. Help us understand what happens elsewhere and how the developments on the global market trickle down into the Ghanaian economy and eventually influence fuel prices.
Okay, so if you look at the price formula, I think globally, including Ghana, one of the key components of the price buildup is the world market price. As you know, petroleum products are globally traded commodities. So everyone pricing petroleum products everywhere has to look at the international benchmark for the products. So this world market price is mainly influenced by supply and demand fundamentals. So anything that goes to affect demand or supply of petroleum products will affect the price of the petroleum products on the world market. In recent times, the main issues is a combination of factors. The current one, which everyone is following, is what is happening in Russia. Why is Russia and Ukraine conflict having effect on prices? Russia is a major oil producer. Currently, they are part of the group called the OPEC. Russia is not originally a member, but they have joined them, so now they call themselves the OPEC Plus, because the likes of Russia, who are not original members, have joined them. So anything that affects the supply of oil from Russia is definitely going to affect oil prices. Sanctions are likely to be imposed on Russia if they invade Ukraine. I think there are signals from the European countries that they intend to do that. So this is why the prices are rising, because anything that affects Russia's ability to export crude oil or natural gas to the European countries is leading to a shortage of supply of oil, and therefore prices will rise. Like I said, the price are a function of supply and demand. Anytime supply is short, prices are going to rise.
Such a disconnect there, particularly when you look at Ghana's economy. This is an economy that has oil at the base of its resources or natural resources. The belief is that at least as a nation, we should be benefiting from some of these raw materials. How come that the dynamics elsewhere is rather affecting us when indeed we have some supply here within our economy?
So first of all, we need to put the oil Ghana has into context. There have been arguments that Ghana is a net exporter of crude oil and therefore we should not be exposed to the impact of rising prices. But that's not how it works. The oil itself, like I said, is an internationally traded commodity. So the price at which you use for your formula will be based on the international price. So we would have to look at, if government wants to do anything, it will have to look at what it gets from the oil it produces. So we produce roughly, if you look at the data from last year, Ghana produces roughly about 150,000 metric tons of barrels of crude a day. And checks indicate that Ghana gets about 18% of this, which is just about 27,000 barrels. As a nation, our daily consumption of petroleum products is over 90,000 barrels a day. So if you compare what the state share of the crude oil produced in Ghana is, and compared to our demand as a nation, it is way lower. So we cannot consider ourselves a net exporter just because we produce 150,000 barrels, because we don't own all of that 150,000 barrels. So what government could have done, if it was even owned all of the oil we produce, was to look at the revenue it generates from there, and either, like some countries do, lower the taxes on the petroleum products for the consumer, or say it will not tax petroleum products at all. Because remember that countries all over the world generate taxes from different products, and petroleum products are one of the main sources of revenue for most governments. In Ghana, government generates revenue from taxes. So we always have to put the product we consume here into context. What volume of it do we get, and how can that support the nation?
Besides that point, concerns have been emerging about the best possible strategy that government should be adopting now in terms of cushioning Ghanaians and also persons who rely on crude. What's the best strategy going forward? I'm sure that the NPA has been monitoring the mechanisms adopted so far. There are concerns about going in for more tax cuts. Some persons are of a different opinion. Where's the NPA's position in all of these concerns and perspectives that are emerging as to cushioning the Ghanaian?
So whatever NPA does will have to be in the context of the law. So the law will have to guide them too. As a regulator, I think I've mentioned before that we do not make fiscal policies for government in terms of where it raises its revenue from. We would have been happy if there was no tax on petroleum products at all, but that is not the reality. So the reality is that it's a difficult situation for government now. One, government needs to generate revenue to support the budget, and two, prices are rising. So would scrapping all the taxes of petroleum products be a reality? Is that feasible? I'm sure you would agree that that is not feasible for the government at this moment. And that is where NPA looks at the law and where there's flexibility to do something about it. So for us as a regulator, what we are focusing on now is that now that the prices are rising, we have to make sure that, as we always do, that the consumer is not overpriced in the face of this challenge. And even for the supplier of the products, that they are also recovering their investment fairly. Mind you, if the rising prices is having an effect on the ability to supply products, I'm not sure we prefer not to have the product at all. We prefer to have the product and pay the right price for it. So for us, we have made some recommendations to government as to what it can do, but it all depends on the government fiscal space, whether it is
and that's why I'm concerned about the recommendations. That's why I'm concerned about the recommendations you make to government on this. So many stakeholders have been preferring their best possible approach. What's that of the NPA in terms of the recommendations you're giving?
So like I said, we as NPA, we would have been happy if there's no tax on product, but that's not feasible. So for us, we look at what can be done, and what we did, for example, was to look at the laws available to us of all the taxes, which one could have been touched. And from the law, the price stabilization and recovery levy was the one that could have been used to support the consumer. But I think I've said this before again, that it also has limitations, because this price stabilization and recovery levy plays two important roles. One is to pay for subsidies on premix fuel and residual fuel oil. Premix fuel used by the fishermen, and residual fuel oil used by the members of AGI, Association of Ghana Industries, for production. So it was taken up for a while. It was based on our recommendation, but it cannot go up forever, because if it goes up forever, then it means that the ability for the suppliers of this premix fuel and residual fuel oil will also be challenged, because they will not be able to recover their investment. So where we sit, our work is to make sure there's fair pricing. With regards to whether government is able to remove all the taxes from petroleum products,
right.
Is another thing.
Indeed, there's more on this issue, particularly on the undulating prices and the level of uncertainty. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it appears we've never seen this kind of uncertainty before. It's the market, I mean, the issue of the markets, really. But how long are we going to stay on this, the consistent rise in the prices of fuel on the market?
Yeah, you are very right. We've never seen this steep rise in petroleum products before. Prices of petroleum products will always rise and will fall at a point. But for the past, if I'm not mistaken, for the past 6 months, it's been actually from the beginning of last year, it's been rising. But you see, there are a number of factors. From last year, the main issue was because economies were recovering from lockdowns. And when they were lockdowns, there was no demand for petroleum products. So when the demand was low, prices fell. And once demand was returning, the price were rising. Unfortunately for the global market, geopolitics set in, where we had the Saudis and the UAE and Saudis and the Yemeni Houthis having their own issues. I think that has calmed down. And we also had the issues about sanctions on Iran. Fortunately for the market, there seems to be some progress being made on negotiations between the US and Iran. So Iran oil is likely to come back to the market. The major issue now is with the Russia-Ukraine situation. We are hoping that this can also be resolved quickly, so that the market will calm down. The OPEC and its members have promised to be increasing their supply by 400,000 barrels every month, so that we can have more products on the market. So we are hopeful that if this Russia-Ukraine issue is resolved very soon, the market will calm for the tension and the kind of speculation we are seeing to bring down prices. But the market this year, speculation is that the prices are going to be a bit higher than we had last year.
Unfortunate, but we need to brace up for more. I'm grateful for your time. That's Abbas Ibrahim Tasunti, who's head of pricing at the NPA. Fortunately, Peter Tekwe is joining us now. He's a policy analyst, understands very much issues pertaining to this energy crisis. But Peter, what's your take on this? The prediction is that there's more uncertainty and we're likely to pay more in the coming days. What's the way out, really? That's what we're looking for.
Yes, thank you very much. Indeed, this shows that we are not in normal times, because we are facing a situation that is not peculiar to the past. We just started a year, and unfortunately, looking at the tension between Ukraine and Russia, the uncertainties surrounding it, shows that we are not going to get out of this soon, even though every effort is being made. But the issue is what is the way out, because we're expecting that in the next month or two, this can come down. But unfortunately, the way out then is that there has to be a sharing between the government and then the citizenry. And the sharing means that government will not say that nothing can be done whilst price on the world market keep increasing. So there needs to be a stakeholder consultation between the BDCs, the government, and then the OMCs, to see, because you see, the BDC and the OMC can only do something on their margins, because the cost is, you can't do anything about cost. Then we have to share the margin. How do we share it? That is when government will decide to, alleviate the plight by...
So it's just like we're between a rock and a hard place. Quite an unfortunate situation for government. The point is that we're in a post-COVID period where most governments around the world are very much in dire needs of resources. So the funding, taxation will obviously be the priority at this point. Here we are in Ghana. We're producing as well, and yet we're not able to cushion our citizens. So are you predicting then that there will be tougher times for us as a nation?
That is a decision for government, whether they would like to still, let the cost being passed on to the consumer or not. Because don't forget that government is not losing 100%. We are gaining as well from what we are also, exploiting as well. Don't forget that, the government is out also making some revenue from the exploration as well. And so it is up to government to say that, yes, even though we are in tough times, when COVID set in, it was a tough time, but government was able to take some policy measures, was able to alleviate some of was able to introduce some measures to actually reduce the plight on Ghanaians. The same thing can be done now, and it cannot get, as the quantum cannot be as expected, but at least something to reduce it. Because look, if today price gets to 150, are we still going to say that nothing can be done? Of course, that's what they need to be. That's what they'll be sharing at some moment. So the revenue you are getting versus the cost that is being passed on to the consumer, what do we do? In the middle, there should be a win-win situation. And that is what I think that has to be done at this time. There should be a cost sharing. Of course, there should be a sacrifice. And definitely where we are now, someone must sacrifice, and especially on the part of government. And that is what needs to be done, because it will continue for a while. And once it continues, government cannot continuously be silent. A lot has been said of what needs to be done. We need some immediate stem solution to be able to just reduce the burden on the ordinary Ghanaian, because the impact of it is that transport will also keep going up. And so will government say, because I need funds, I need resources? No, these things have a lot of implications on the economic world.
Peter Tekped, certainly this is not the end of the conversation. We'll have to do this some time later, obviously, as the predictions are that the fuel prices will continue to surge. Now.